Dear diary, journal. Diary, journal. I'm going with journal. I'm not comfortable enough with my masculinity to have a diary. And in any event, journal is just what Christians call a diary that's been sanctified. What to talk about from this week? What a week. Maybe start with the world. Man. A couple of months ago, we had a funny word pop up called coronavirus. Not so funny after 2 months of being spread all around the world. Then right after that, for a brief period, we had the murder hornets. And then a couple of weeks ago, we had a horrible action in Minneapolis that set off horrible riots throughout the country, including where we live. It's just right from one thing to the next. But really not much out of the murder hornets. I feel like we skipped the murder hornets. There's lots of difficult things right now to think about how to talk to your kids. It's hard to know how to tell 2, 5, and 10-year-olds about something so small they can't even see that's caused so much death and destruction around the world. And injustice. How do you teach that to your kids? It's one thing to talk about what the Bible says about justice, but it's another thing when they see so many people in the news and on TV taking justice into their own hands and claiming that that's really the only way to get what you really want. Difficult. Family's well. After spending 2 months doing basically nothing, seems like this week everything started. Baseball, work started picking up. All good things, but when you've been doing basically nothing for 2 months, to have all of that turned back on in a day, that's a lot. And I'm realizing all over again I'm not great at time management. Good thing Andrea's not here to confirm that. But I did have a couple of things happen this week worth sharing. I had a dear friend that was surprised by some bad news. Not bad news like, hey, your dog's sick, but bad news, world-shattering, earth-shattering bad news. And when I called him to talk about it, his response was so calm and trusting, not in the situation, but in the Lord. It was inspiring. In the midst of chaos going on around and chaos going on in his life, that calmness and that simple serenity and trust in the Lord, very admirable and something that I desire to have as well. And along that theme, I happened to see a text message that my wife sent to a friend of ours who's also going through some difficult things right now, and I just want to read that text message. She wrote, "Don't focus on the difficulty of the situation, but on the sufficiency of God." That's really the theme for this week. Is God enough with all that's going on in the world around? Do I trust Him enough to cover the gaps where my humanity shows, where I don't raise my kids right, where I don't do right in my marriage? Is God enough? For me, that's the thing that I'm thinking about this week.
Dear Diary, such a good, faithful friend. Well, I just wanted to tell you about a couple things. this week. One morning this week, I woke up to the beautiful sound of my daughter blowing chunks by my bed. It sucked. And then what she said after she got all the throw up out of her mouth right by my bed was, "Oh no, I have coronavirus." And I realized in that moment that, first of all, that's really funny because that's not at all what coronavirus is. But also it's really sobering to realize that my 5-year-old worries about the things she hears about in the world. And realizing that her dad and I could probably do a better job at checking in with her on her fears and what she thinks about, and talking to her about the things that she knows, and trying to come down to her level on those things, and helping her to understand a little bit better. But that's kind of hard with something like coronavirus and all the other things going on in the world. You know, how do we do a better job at that? And I think that's something that I'll probably revisit. And then just tonight, my son and I were laying in his bed as I was tucking him in, my oldest, Jackson. And Jackson was asking me a few questions, and some were funny. And then he asked me, "Mom, what do you regret the most?" And I felt the world slam me in that moment. I thought about all the things that I regret, and there are a lot. And I told him, that's probably a conversation for a different time, because honestly, I'm not ready to unwrap that with him. And some of those decisions that I made, I'm not ready for him to know. But what I did say is a lot of things, and I hope that you don't get to my age and have the regrets that I do. And as a parent, I want better for him than what I did. But it's also hard not to control that, and not to try to hold too tight and control and want to make his life be what I think it should be. So here I am, trying to teach my kids about coronavirus and regrets and how to finish the laundry and not blow chunks by my bed.